looks like it's just the... So I'm going to make a really quick announcement change. It's not too big, and I'll announce it again out there to the folks that are out still in the hallway. But originally, after this session, after this IDIQ panel session, I had mentioned everyone to go back in the big conference room for Luke McCormick from DHS to speak. What we decided is we're just all going to stay in here, so we're not shuffling back and forth. So after this session, we'll have Luke McCormick from Homeland Security speak, and then we'll have the Small Business Proven Strategy session following that. So as just a way of a brief introduction, we have Rob Coen as our moderator. He is the GWAC Program Director for NITAC within NIH, and if anyone's familiar with CIOCS or CIOSP3, Rob here is certainly the person in charge, and it's very interesting having him moderate because Rob is usually sitting on the panel, so I'm very, very thankful and fortunate for Rob to come up here and moderate this wonderful esteemed panel, which I'll let him introduce. So, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a little bit different. I usually am sitting on a panel talking about the IDIQs that we manage at the NITAC program, but I thought this was a good opportunity to step into a different role and try to facilitate a conversation with these great speakers here who represent some great programs. But really, I think that whenever I do this, whether I'm giving a presentation or participating in a panel, I really like to get the audience to interact. And I really think that you all came here to get something out of this, and we could sit up here and talk to you for an hour, but we really would like you to ask questions and get those questions answered or some insights that you're looking for to hear about. So with that, I'm going to just let each of the presenters, starting with Alexandra, introduce herself, talk a little bit about the program that she's working on, and just to kick it off, and each panelist will give like a little 5-minute overview. But then I want to really just open it up right away to questions from the audience. So think of some things that you want to target as questions to help you as small businesses, whether you are participating in an active IDIQ or you're looking to find out how you can participate in future IDIQs, or how you can partner with existing companies who are on IDIQs. So with that, Alexandra.
Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra Rouse from GSA. I am the Professional Services Program Executive within the Professional Services portfolio, which officially launched yesterday, so we're excited about that. I oversee the program offices for OASIS and the Professional Services schedules and key projects that are happening within the professional services category. Today I'm here to talk to you about OASIS Small Business, which is a professional services MAC or multiple award contract IDIQ. We just started year 2 of this contract. It is for scientific, financial, consulting, project management, engineering type services, and we cover all types of contract types, not limited to firm fixed price like our sister schedules program is. We do cost reimbursement, we do R&D, we do time and materials, labor hours. We have set up a small business, a family of contracts under 7 different pools to address those primary core areas that I just went over. In our 2 years, we've been doing fairly well. To date, we've issued 257 task orders against the small business contracts. Our average order size is about $14 million. We typically get 3.8 bids back on task order solicitation, and the estimated value of the small business, OASIS Small Business to date is about $3.8 million. So we're very happy about that number. When we stood up OASIS 2 years ago, it was a brand new contract vehicle. We didn't have anything in the pipeline. It's slowly been making its way through government. We're starting to see a lot of interest and solicitation advice and upcoming task orders for this particular vehicle, so we're very excited about it. We're also gearing up sometime this fiscal year for an on-ramp in our Pool 2 area, which deals with financial services and R&D in the human sciences area, excuse me. As of today, we have a snapshot. Our best customers with small business is the Air Force, who have already obligated $547 million, the Army, who's obligated $102 million, and the Navy, who's obligated $76 million. Our best performing small business at this time is Odyssey Systems Consulting Group, who have captured $89 million in task orders, Colsa Corporation with $54 million, and Samaria with $51 million. So again, we're 2 years in. Our base year ends in 3 years. At that time, small businesses who have been successful on the small business vehicle will graduate or have an opportunity to become part of the unrestricted OASIS contract vehicle. So in 3 years, we'll be opening up the OASIS small business to backfill the vendors who have, in a sense, graduated. We anticipate a hefty percentage of those contractors to be moving on because of their growth. We're conservatively estimating about 65 to 70%.
Great, thank you. I've heard so many good things about the OASIS program, just from how it was structured at the beginning, right through to the performance and the customer satisfaction with it. So I think it's a great contract vehicle. So Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on at IHS?
Absolutely.
And some of the contracts that you're working on, and we'll let you go at it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, the IAC, and Jeff. I don't know if he's in the room. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today and speak with all of you. IHS doesn't own or operate its own GWAC, but hopefully what I can do is touch base on how my agency utilizes the IDIQ type of contract type, or GWACs, and hopefully that's kind of and I'll have a couple suggestions from my point of view that hopefully will hit home with you. Mike Fischer, I am the lead contract specialist contracting officer with the Indian Health Service, with the headquarters division of acquisition policy. Just a brief overview of IHS. So IHS is basically has 12 area offices. We also operate 168 IHS-owned or tribally owned service units. These service units deliver health care to the Native American populations across the country. We also have urban medical resource centers for Native Americans in urban areas, and those are usually facilitated with nonprofit organizations. So we really have a quite extensive health care delivery system in place. To facilitate that mission, it comes down to the contractual operations is where my department kicks in. Our last year fiscal year spend was around $720 million, spread over 20,000 contract actions, to give you a perspective of, the effort involved to keep these service units supported, both in terms of services and supplies. And that also includes IT services, electronic health record type of system developments, implementations. So it's the portfolio is very, very broad in how we support that mission. The way our office, and I'll just speak for the headquarters, since the areas are kind of decentralized to some extent, have their own CCOs and direction, but the headquarters operation facilitates the way we determine GWAC utilization. Our own IDIQ development is based on time and resources, and that really will fluctuate as we move through the fiscal year. So in quarters 1 and 2, my office will not shy away from developing our own IDIQ if we feel the need is most benefit, if the most benefit is there for us to deliver the required service that we're looking for. As we move into the 3 and 4, we definitely start moving towards utilizing GWACs out in the market. Obviously, we have the NIH NITAC, which is probably the most heavily used, at least within the HHS arena. But obviously, we have the GSA GWACs as well, OASIS, and of course the IT-70, which has been a staple for federal contracting for some years now. It's really, like I said, if you speak with a lot of contracting officers and a lot of contracting shops, most of them will tell you they're understaffed, and that seems to be a common thread throughout the government. And because of that, which is why we really rely heavily on market research to really determine how we're going to move forward. And is one of my biggest suggestions whenever I'm in a matchmaking, which I'm here today, so you're probably going to hear me say that again if you meet with me today. But my biggest suggestion is always to pursue those market research opportunities. And I can sympathize with private sector because a lot of times I get feedback that they feel it is a black hole, that they send their capabilities or source sought responses and they never hear back from a government official. And unfortunately, that probably is the case at sometimes, but I can speak for HHS and our directives that it is critical to our operations of acquisition planning and how we go about facilitating our requirement, no matter what stage of the fiscal year we're in. The same requirements remain in effect throughout the whole year, and that is that as a contracting officer, I have the obligation to submit to the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Businesses, so OSDBU, package to determine on whether it should go small or large. And to do that, I need the responses from you all throughout the source of SOTs, to RFIs, to document that. And without your responses, there's no way I could justify going small. So it's in your best interest to reply to those, even though it might be, a headache and or inconvenient with all the other active projects you probably have on your plate. But the one piece of advice I will say is there is a difference in how you reply to those. General capability statements will never get you that far in trying to establish a set aside. I can speak for my shop. We usually have a statement in those source of SOTs, if you look in the fine detail, that we will not entertain generic capability statements, meaning a one-page, snapshot of your company and your contact information. What we're really looking for from a contracting perspective is an actual unique reply to the either draft scope of work that we put out or the notice and the details of the technical requirements. We're looking for ways for you to kind of, in so many words without submitting a full proposal, give us the ability to determine you as capable of performing. If we can do that and we have 2 or more, we automatically move to recommend set aside at that point. And for that reason, a lot of my colleagues have been promoting having you guys facilitate sharing the market or the source of SOT announcements to your competitors, to other quality firms that are out there, because even though they're your competitors, it's in your best interest for them to reply, because if we don't get 2 or more, then more than likely the CO is not going to move for set aside. So even though they're your competitor at first, to get it set aside, you automatically put yourself in a better competition pool for that procurement if it is deemed to be set aside for total small or a particular socioeconomic category. So those are my general rules of advice leading off. I feel wholeheartedly that the market research phase is where I try to help small businesses get their foot in the door. A lot of times they get calls for, can we meet with the program? Can we have a demonstration? And those are all things that I can entertain, but it really doesn't do you any good if it doesn't go set aside at the end of the day. And that's where I can facilitate a change with the market research aspect. So I'll kind of leave it at that, but thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I think that's some really good advice. I've noticed over the years in running the NITAC program that I have a lot of customers that go out with the source of SOT on the small business vehicle, and they don't get the responses that they're looking for, so they immediately then just turn and drop their task or requirement on the large business vehicle. So it's really important as a small business to really partner up and figure out a way to be able to respond to those source of SOTs so that the agencies can make those right decisions and really try to set stuff aside. And it's amazing to me sometimes how, the complaints that we get afterwards of why something wasn't set aside, and I can go right back and go and show them the data and say, well, we put out a sources sought, or this customer put out a sources sought to the small business community, and there wasn't sufficient response. So that is the market research that was used as analysis in order to make that acquisition strategy decision. So it's really, really important, Michael. It's really good advice. So Kermit, let's talk a little bit about what's going on at GSA, specifically with the Alliance Small Business Contract.
Yeah, looking forward to doing that. My name is Kermit McKelvy. I am actually part of General Services Administration Integrated Technology Services. I actually work in the part of category management with IT services. I am here today to represent the GWAC Small Business Office. As a lot of you all may know, all of our contract vehicles are acquisition sensitive at this point. And just to, in the spirit of full disclosure, I'm not a contracting official. So I don't know that information. If I did, I probably wouldn't talk about it anyway. There'd be a lot of folks that would be upset with me. But just to let you know that that's what's going on. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about where we live in the organization, how our vehicles are working, give you some thought behind what we do, and then leave it from there. I think most folks are probably familiar with the GWAC and what it is. It's a task or delivery order for IT services. The overarching contract is the master contract is an IDIQ. And so, it works the typical way. There's an RFP, businesses, suppliers submit offers, and then GSA awards those contracts to a group that we call the pool. And then the task orders from that point on are competed inside that pool. So there's actually two opportunities for competition the way that our program is set up. So our customers like that, our customer agencies like that quite a bit because you're dealing with a pool of the best, right? So they know when they put that task order out there that they're getting the best folks that can do this work. The second reason is that it's much faster. We've looked at some of the numbers for turnaround time, the requirements to award cycle, and it's about 30% faster. So our customer agencies like that as well. And then another thing that our customer agencies like quite a bit is that they can actually control the procurement. The way our program is set up, the contracting officer from the servicing agency can actually control it. They can use their processes, they can use their people, they can use their selection methods. So there's full control there, and customers have a tendency to like that quite a bit. The organization, the way that GSA is set up is the GWAC's acquisition contracts program is part of Integrated Technology Services. Some of the folks that you may know that are associated with that, Mary Davy, that's a name that probably sounds familiar. She's top 50 women in information technology. She's an Eagle Award winner. We're part of her organization. And then Casey Kelly actually runs the GWACs, is the GWAC's director. The program has two halves to it. There's the restricted half and then the unrestricted half. Alliant is the program and the contract vehicle for the unrestricted portion. And then on the other side, which is where I'm from and representing here today, is the restricted program. There's three contract vehicles that are in the restricted program: Alliance Small Business, 8A Stars, and VETS. VETS is the Service-Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Program. So if you look at Alliant, that contract vehicle, Alliant Small Business, that contract vehicle has a $15 billion ceiling. There's $5 billion of obligation have been placed against that particular contract. There's 48 suppliers that are part of it, and about 86% of the suppliers have received an order on that contract. And then 8A Stars, there's about 582 suppliers that participate in that program. There's been about $4 billion of obligation placed against that contract. And then there's, I think it's 66% of the suppliers have received an order. And then for VETS, that program has a $5 billion ceiling, $2 billion have been obligated on that contract, and there's about 86% of the suppliers who've received an order through that contract. So GSA is running these programs, and GSA is placing good products out there with a certain set of responsibilities. And really, when I think about the responsibilities that we've got in this program, it really breaks down into two halves. One is the government strategy is to create competition, right? So that is the key term for us. We talk a lot about set aside, but the reality is there's a lot of set aside, and competition, at least from our perspective, is built into that. The other one is to create opportunities and remove barriers for small businesses to compete successfully in the government acquisition process. As a matter of fact, if you talk to our program about a informal vision statement they may have, it would be to provide the 70 best small business suppliers, and then have them bring along some more small business suppliers into the government acquisition process through partnering and other methods. And if you had a mission statement, sort of an informal mission statement that they talked about, it would be to create opportunities and remove barriers for small businesses to participate in the government acquisition process. So that's how GSA kind of looks at its responsibilities from a GWAC small business program. So the real question is kind of how do you get involved? I think for our program, it really comes down to two things. One is when there's a solicitation, you got to put an offer up. That's really the key to the whole thing. So some of the things that you need to do is stay aware of when those solicitations are going out, when the offers are, and when your offers should be coming back in, and participate. Actually put your offer together and submit it. The other one is through subcontracting. The GWAC Small Business Program is pretty open in terms of allowing suppliers to subcontract. So that's the other way that you can get in there, really only those two ways. One of the things that we've become committed to within the program is having open seasons and renewal periods. So our contracts usually have a five-year base and then a 5-year option. And of course, when you're dealing with small businesses, there are different reasons that your pool size changes, right? So as businesses graduate or get bought up or merge. And so one of the things that you'll want to do if you choose to get involved and you want to get involved is to look for those renewal periods and those open seasons, which we're committed to having going forward. The first one was last year with vets, and we will have those going forward as well with the other programs. Okay, so opening remarks I just wanted to share with you, just a reminder we're acquisition sensitive, and I look forward to entertaining your other questions after in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Kermit. So I know you've all been, thinking about what questions you're going to ask. You've been writing them down, and you all know it's over 100 degrees outside, so we could stay in this room for as long as we want to. I'm in no rush to get out there. So let's just start it off. I mean, you've got some questions. Go right ahead, sir.
2 questions, Mr. IHS. Great.
Yeah.
First one, maybe it's an easy one. As you know, CMS is in the process of trying to get Spark award. If it ever does get award, and not protest it. Could you just talk for a minute about your view of using Spark as an HHS vehicle, either reverse NIAC vehicle, or how do you see Spark as a potential vehicle for yourself? Could you repeat the question?
So,
Sir.
do you want me to
Yeah,
repeat the
go ahead.
question? Sure.
Yeah.
So his question was, CMS is in the process of awarding a Spark IDIQ contract, a very large IDIQ contract for IT services. And the RFP on that contract did say that it could be used HHS-wide. So the question is how does Michael perceive IHS using that vehicle versus using the wonderful, best in show contracts at the NITAC program at NIH. But I'll let Michael talk, and then I'll answer the question.
Not making any friends up here. No, it's a great question. I would have to say that my official the answer will hold until they actually award it, obviously, and I see what they actually end up getting through. But I would say, for planning purposes, I would absolutely be entertain promoting to the staff in my office to start utilizing that in the early market research phases and acquisition planning. We don't really commit to anything. Like I said, I alluded to the fact that a lot of times the way we determine whether we're going to go via a GWAC or an internal IDIQ is based on resources and time and where we are in the fiscal year. Not to say that determines it all the time, but it definitely plays a big part into how we do things, because each vehicle has its own strengths and weaknesses, obviously, and the flexibilities it provides the CEO. So I think the Spark, I think it provides an excellent opportunity for HHS CEOs and contracting shops. But you can't, for a lot of contracts that are going on the follow-ons, there are some proven efficiencies with the ones that we've utilized, such as NITAC, obviously, but Oasis and Alliant are out there as well. Our office has our own a strategic sourcing officer who monitors the vehicles that we are using, and it gets reported to the SPE for her to publish and HHS wide. So there are a lot of things that go into it. I'll hold judgment, like I said. This is probably not the answer you wanted to hear, but there's nothing that's going to stop us from looking at it in the sense of planning and maybe utilizing it during the market
I've
research.
locked that door. You cannot leave. Sorry, Michael. They're trying to get out.
Follow-up question.
Something's wrong with the
Yeah.
door. Sure. No, so I wanted to just touch base. Mike, that's a great answer Michael gave. One thing that a contracting officer needs to do when they're going to utilize a vehicle is to do a best procurement approach determination. And there may be times when a Spark vehicle is a better procurement approach for a certain requirement. And there may be times when a GSA schedule buy is a better procurement approach, or an Alliant buy, or an Oasis buy. But that is part of the business advisor role that a contracting officer plays before they make that final determination as to what contract they're going to use. So Spark just adds to that toolbox that a contracting officer has. Follow up.
So just to follow up, if I can, either 2 or 3 of you had said we should respond to your market research, market survey. That's wonderful that we'd like to. Most small businesses don't have every one of these max units. Maybe 1 or 2. If you're not going to use Spark, you're probably not a good customer for me, because that's the GWAC that I have. Is there any conversation around putting out a market survey and then being allowed to bring different vehicles that different companies have, and the contracting officer having the flexibility to use any one of 3, rather than knock out 50% of your potential competition because we don't have that particular.
I'll take a shot at that. Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. I would say the way we were mitigating that risk is I would say 90% of our sources thoughts go out on FBO. And if you look on FBO, for ours anyway, we actually have in there, there's a list of 1 through 10, let's say, and somewhere in there we have that in your response, please note any applicable GWAC, IDIQ, or schedule holder that you might have. And that's one way when we're reviewing the responses and aggregating all the data, that is a major component on, if we have a large skew to one of the GWACs, then we know we're going to have the most amount of competition in that arena. So, the FBO is the best way. I know NITAC and GSA have their own portals that they can issue source of thoughts on, so that would be a risk there for you. Obviously, you're not going to see that if you don't hold a contract there, but we try to facilitate our market research through FBO because it is the most open and openly shared portal or database that's out there. Not to say that I haven't been part of offices that utilize the GSA source of thought announcements. Again, it's, at that point, to Rob's point, we are business advisors. We owe the program the best opportunity to get fair, reasonable pricing. And yes, it's already established under GSA, but, you know, competition is the best way to establish cost reasonableness. And you know, we're always, at least from my perspective, I'm always going to lean towards the contract or GWAC competition strategy, whatever you want to call it, that offers the most amount of competition, because that gives us the most amount of flexibility during negotiations or discussions, to really hone in on fair and reasonable, and also in a technical solution. So
I'd like to add on to that. I know, maybe not specifically to your case, but a lot of times, as we're talking to customers, Oasis is something that they want to use, but as Rob indicated, that there is, like, a lot of agencies use Oasis as part of a toolkit. One of the things that makes Oasis unique is that we don't have any limitation on our subcontracting. So if there is you may be a contract holder on a particular MAC, but there might be something that you could bring value to, for example, the Oasis contract holders. We encourage other small businesses to market their niche businesses, their niche knowledge to the contract holders that are on Oasis, because then that gives you more opportunity. It expands the level of service that we get from industry to our customers, and ultimately can provide a better package to the customer and their requirements. So if you're working with an agency that does have multiple solutions as part of their toolkit, I would probably reach out to the other folks on those contracts as well and see if there's opportunity for a teaming arrangement or a prime sub relationship, and move forward that way. It's just another way to capture some business.
I think that's an excellent point. I talk to a lot of small businesses. I spent the first 12 years of my career at the Small Business Administration, and the advice I always gave to small businesses was, don't focus just on that IDIQ contract that you have an prime award on. You should have a subcontracting relationship with every IDIQ contract out there, developing teaming relationships so that you have insight to what's going on the other IDIQs. I know small businesses don't have the resources to be able to bid and get on every IDIQ that's out there so that they're playing in every market that's going on, but it's really important that you use your strengths to be able to build those teaming relationships with those small businesses who are on some of these other vehicles, so that you can be part of those opportunities as well. That's really important. Kramer, did you have anything you wanted to add, or should we just...
No, it's consistent with our perspective. I mean, I said in my opening remarks that teaming is a really great way to get involved. And it's the other thing that you have to think about as well is the whole marketing component of that. When you want, you know, even if you are a prime, you still make sense to be a sub on some other contracts and in other programs, because you've got it gives you the opportunity to get your name out there and grow your business, which is really what folks are about. So, you know, it's consistent with what our...
One of the things that's great about all of these IDIQs is it allows for, there's no restriction on subcontracting. So that those primes on those vehicles aren't restricted to the subs that they can bring on board as teams. So it really provides you an opportunity to build some relationships and to be able to grow your business not only through the prime aspect, but through the subcontracting relationships as well. You know, the other thing that's really important that I like to emphasize is that, you know, I talk to a lot of groups and they go, well, I didn't get an award on your contract, so I'm like shut out. I can't play, right?
Yeah, I get that a lot.
You know, so, you know, I sort of make this joke all the time, is that if you have an award on an IDIQ, you love it. If you don't have an award on it, you hate it. And you want somebody to create another one down the road so you can get on it. But that's not necessarily the right way to look at it, I think. Even if you don't, and there are many, many small businesses who are not at the point in their life cycle where they're able to get an award on an IDIQ contract. IDIQ contracts aren't meant to be necessarily business development or economic development tools for small businesses. If you look at the awards on IDIQ contracts to the prime contractors, the agencies are looking for the best of the best in the industry to be able to have an IDIQ contract that can meet those in-depth needs that those federal agencies are looking for in those sophisticated solutions that agencies are looking for. So even if you don't get an award, or if you're not ready to prime on a vehicle like this, you should be chasing after teaming arrangements with existing prime contract holders and building that portfolio so that the next time it comes around, you're ready to bid as a prime. I think that's really important. Go ahead.
I'd like to add on to that. With the Oasis vehicle also, as I indicated earlier, in 3 years, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for small businesses. We have our solicitations posted online at gsa.gov/oasis. And you really want to take a look at those because it goes over the evaluation criteria to capture an Oasis contract. Those same evaluation criteria are going to be used at the option period in 3 years when we have to backfill the small businesses. Start benchmarking yourselves now. Take a look at what the evaluation criteria is. The businesses that are on Oasis used a self-scoring evaluation sheet. So you can benchmark, see where you are right now. And then if there's areas that your business might be weak in, you have time to build up your business, your strengths, and to make yourself more competitive in 3 years when the option period opens up. It's just some food for thought. But like I said, we have that on our website, gsa.gov/oasis.
You'll be able to build your team now.
Yeah.
To be ready. Yeah. So other questions from the audience? We're all here to...
We got a quiet group.
It's late today, I guess. That's what we did.
Yes, sir.
So, in regards to the Oasis on that, are you looking for the pools, I know you said you mentioned pool two first, and I'm sure that in 2019 was around, some of the small businesses are graduating out of that. But for the point system, are you going to look at the current pool, or is there a pool going to be established for points, or how will you determine how the entry into
Okay. As I understand it, and I'm not one of the contracting officers, what they're going to be using is the scoring mechanism that they used before. So typically, they took the top 40 in any given pool, and whatever those top 40 scores were what they went to contract with. So the small businesses, as they move over, will have to match or be better than the 40th score.
Other questions? Comments? Suggestions to create an IDIQ you're not on? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I can appreciate that. Have been part of small business and understand that puts pressure on it. You know, the flip side of it is the government has put some things in place to provide some really good solutions in over the long run. And as Alex said, the current selection methods that we're using are, you know, part of that is to address that timeline and those time frames and to reduce it and take some of that uncertainty and pressure off of you. So we recognize it. We're trying to do things that don't affect you and limit that undue pressure on you, and we're getting better, but obviously from your comment, there's an opportunity to get even better.
That's good feedback. Thank you.
Other feedback or comments? Yes, sir. Oh, go right ahead.
So a comment about the RFIs and requests for responses to the RFIs. Short RFIs are good from a time perspective for small businesses. It's not very involved. Some RFIs that come out are mini proposals unto themselves with pricing, estimates, what we want, basically full pricing, but
with Oasis, we've seen that happen. Their approach with the actual solicitation themselves is very streamlined, and there's a lot of things that you're prohibited from doing. Say, you can't solicit under Oasis and then Oasis Small Business. It goes against the FAR requirements within the contract. So we're seeing that some agencies have started doing exactly what you're talking about. And what Fran indicated is that some RFIs are very simple, there are a few questions, and they're easy to address. Other RFIs that come out look like mini solicitations with full price requests, that sort of thing. With Oasis, our contracting officers are very particular about their relationships with our customers and with industry. And we feel that if there's a good working relationship among all three parties, then things go very well. The risk for protest is low. We have very robust industry partners, and when these types of things come to our attention, we do reach out to the contracting officers and ask them, what's going on? You know, why are you doing this? You are from the training that you got, you know that you can ask for this, you can ask for that. Is there something specific to the actual requirement that you need some clarification on? These are the types of things that we talk to our customers about, just because we know that doing RFIs, doing proposals, it costs money. Whether you're big or small, it costs money. So we're trying to be cognizant of that. We also will sit with them, we'll work on recommendations. We do a lot of hand-holding with our customers as far as acquisition requirements, best practices, and then we also try to school them a little bit, especially like if you're posting an RFI or a solicitation, be reasonable with your time request. Make sure you don't ask for 3 days. You're doing something that's very complex. It's going to take them some time to put it together. Be reasonable in your requirements. We had someone say that they needed a service provider within a specific area, and they listed the solicitation over the holidays and gave 2-week turnaround, and they couldn't figure out why they only got 2 responses. Well, you know, you're not really helping industry put their best foot forward. So in the case of Oasis, we are working with we're working with industry to make sure that they're protected that way. We're working with the customer agencies to make sure that they're educated, and sometimes they may not realize how complex or the magnitude of the ask of what they're putting together is for industry. So, you know, if you're hearing things like this, we want it to be brought to our attention so we can do our part and just maintain the relationships between the two and have a conversation to get it fixed.
That's really good advice. Be persistent, fight back, send questions to the contracting officer, send questions to the PMOs who are running these IDIQs, because we want to help you, you know, and sometimes contracting officers do that and they're not thinking through what the implication is of doing that and how burdensome that is on a small business. But be persistent. But one of the things I do suggest is that even if they do that, submit something to let them know that, yes, I'm very interested in this and I have the capabilities of doing this, but I do not have the time to give you all the information that you're asking for.
That's true. They would call back.
Yeah.
And Rob, I'll add one
Yeah,
thing
Mike
to
will
that.
add to that, yeah.
And my take on that is, yeah, I've seen some RFIs, even my office has issued some RFIs that have been more extensive than maybe what would be required in a usual source of sought. One general rule, I guess, that I operate on and try to facilitate the rest of the office is when we're in an RFI stage, that's more than likely that the SOW is either hasn't been created or lacks enough information to be created. The independent government estimate also lacks enough information to be created. And so you're really dealing with a different environment in regards to the federal, what we're dealing with. So we're still very early if we're in an RFI stage versus a source of sought, for example. I would say if I was you, I would prioritize a little bit higher than an RFI, because at that point, it's basically within the contracting shop to determine the appropriate strategy moving forward on competing it. I would say RFI is a great opportunity for you to start building that communication, like Rob said, between yourself and the contracting office to establish, you know, to get your name out there, to to show that you can facilitate and document the technical knowledge that they're looking for on that RFI. But when the source is sought, because even if they do the RFI, more than likely they're going to have to do the source is sought. They can't go around that, at least within the HHS arena. I won't speak for outside HHS, but they're still going to have to come back and do that source is sought to document whether they can go large or small. And at that point, it's in your best interest to submit if you can at that point, because it's a viable procurement to, at that point. So.
We had another question back here.
We have to, determine if they had the cost that we have as a business to put in a proposal. Do you have a cost rule of thumb you use on your side for what it costs you to assess our proposals? Because maybe when I am specifically for the side, what it costs us to develop a 15-page is tremendously different than what it costs us to do a 25 or 30-page, right? And you have all the opinions. So on your side, do you have, what's it cost you to look at our stuff?
Well,
I
I'll
guess
go
I'll
second.
take a stab at it. And I guess these are rough figures, but the general rule based on my experience with contracting, is just to do a modification to exercise an option, which is usually, I'm not going to average them, but let's just say the average is two-page document is $500 per specialist to do that action that maybe will take, an option is already competed, it's already built into the contract, so really the contract specialist is doing a contractual action in the contract writing system, and that alone has been estimated at $500. To do an actual source selection over a 6-month period, I won't even throw a number out there, but it's pretty extensive. It's a very extensive process. I won't try to equate it to what you guys have to do in terms of generating proposal and generating pricing, but I think both have their intensive resources and cost constraints. So that's my take on that. So.
we get that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. So it's funny you asked that question, because just probably about 6 months ago, we attempted to go through that exercise. And part of there are a lot of challenges that we have with that, seeing across many different organizations and the different sizes and activity-based systems that you would pull a lot of that information out of, did not give us confidence in the numbers that we came up with. So we backed off on being able to publicly state something that equated to that. The other thing that we think about is our work is being driven by a set of requirements, right? Things that we have to do. Where we can take shortcuts or reduce things or not do is somewhat limited. And then the flip side to that is you really don't want to waste everybody's time by deciding to take reduction somewhere, doing something less within the solicitation. So you try to do everything you can up front so that everybody only goes through this one time. And that, it's not a great answer for, your issue of having to spend a lot of money to create proposals, but there is a methodology and a purpose behind what we do. We just have to keep in mind that, there is a cost to you as a small business, and we don't want to spend that goodwill capital unwisely.
And for example, to build something like Oasis, it took 2.5 years, 5 people dedicated. That's all they did. So we get requests from customers, particularly DOD, our friends in DOD, who are just like, your fee's too high. We're not appropriated. We're a fee-for-service agency. We're not appropriated. They think that they'll say, well, we can build it in our own shop. Okay, you can issue a task order to us, a very complex one, over $100 million, and we can get it done in 5.5 months. If for them to build a contract similar to Oasis, dedicated FTE, significant amount of time, like I said, Oasis took 2.5 years to build. We got 39 protests, and we won all of them. So there was a large, heavy of effort. The reason why OASIS was created was to save the government and the taxpayer money, to reduce duplication in contract, and to not really streamline, but streamline requirements to an area that has the best-in-class contractors to support the federal government. So it's a hard answer for us to, because that's our purpose, that's our function, that's why we have the 1102 job series, is to put these things together. We try to look at it, what is the most effective way, what is the most efficient way, what's the most time-saving way, but then there's a lot of what we do, because we do it because it serves the mission. It may not save money at all, but it serves the warfighter, for example. We're not a bottom line agency.
Yeah, so the other thing I want to do is extend that thought. It's 2.5 years, and when you're working with Alliant and Alliant Small Business, you end up with similar time frames, right? 1.5 years, 2 years, whatever it is. But all of that time and energy that goes into that is not just for the benefit of the government. I mean, during that time period, you have many industry days. We go out into the communities and educate small businesses and hold, I won't call them matchmaking events, but bringing in decision makers and small businesses together. All of that is part of our research, but there's a benefit to it, the benefit of it to you, and it helps us to structure the thing properly, including a lot of the things that you all want. For example, within STARS, we've got a second constellation. Well, it was the small businesses that wanted to create an environment where additional expertise and quality could be recognized through industry certifications like CMMI, et cetera. Well, that came out of that 1.5 or 2 year period of going out, doing market research, talking to you, and trading information amongst you. So it's not all to the benefit of the government during that period. It's also to the benefit of the small businesses as well.
Right. Any other questions or comments? I think we're coming to the end of our time, but I did want to point out there was a study that was done, a Deltec study that I have, and it's really important to note that the government's use of IDIQs to get their requirements met is growing, and it's growing significantly for many reasons. One is that the Office of Management Budget is really trying to cut down on the number of contracts that agencies are putting out on their own. But the emphasis is, and the emphasis from the small business community should really be to target how you can play in the IDIQ market. Because to be relevant and to be able to grow and be successful over the next coming years, you got to find your niche within the IDIQ market, whether that's through teaming or trying to prime on some of these efforts, or to prepare yourself to prime over the next 3 to 5 years. I think that's very, very important. So I wanted to leave you with that, and I thank you all for being here. I hope we answered all of your questions. I'll be around afterwards, and I'm sure this panel will be around afterwards. Let's give a round of applause to the panel. Thank you.